Robert Frank said something very interesting the other day in a different context. Robert Goizueta, who used to run Coca-Cola, told Robert that the best thing that ever happened to Coke was Pepsi. And if Pepsi didn't exist, he would have to invent a Pepsi. The best thing to happen to these two companies is to have both of them around because the competition is a great impetus for growth. However, two things have to happen for these two companies. Prices have to come down because right now they're 3 times regular meat. And I forget what the other one was, but I'll think of it pretty soon here.
I don't know if they do have to come down, and here's why. Because I think the younger generations are accustomed to paying more. Go ahead. You want
to? These are not a healthy alternative to meat, by the way.
Right.
So they need to change the recipe to make it healthier at the risk of maybe the flavor.
But back to my point about young people being willing to spend more. If they're willing to spend $5 on coffee, prices don't have to come down for Starbucks for people to want Starbucks. What happened was everybody got accustomed to paying more. And the second thing is, it's not just about what's healthy. It's also about getting away from consuming animals, which is bad for the environment. If you look at what's going to happen tomorrow
for the animal.
It's
definitely bad for the animal.
If you look at the climate strike and who's involved with that climate strike tomorrow, it's all young people who are going to be driving this. And I think that I agree that sky's the limit.
Here's what I would say: every one of these bullish cases is going to be
140 billion addressable market.
Is going to be dressed about. They're going to mention TAM. Total addressable market is the justification every one of these bullish analysts will have on these particular products. What I thought was interesting were those analysts out there who say that this is not akin to the whole idea that the total addressable market is that big. It might be just as big as it is for, say, soy milk or almond milk or something else. And we know that the market there is not that big.
We got to go. We got to quickly. Have you tried? I tried the Beyond. I tried the Beyond sausage. Saturday morning, I got Beyond sausage at home. I tried. I liked it. It was all salt.
It tastes like a Bubba burger.
Tastes like beef jerky.
It's not a healthy alternative here.
Oh, but I liked it.
But I'm stunned that you're taking a rap.
Wow. For those out there in the audience who don't know,
I do.
The producers got into Brian's ear and said,
I'm impressed.
Do not miss Impossible Foods CEO Patrick Brown live on Bill Griffith's final ever show tomorrow at 4:30 p.m. No, it's today at 4:30 p.m. Eastern Time on Closing Bell. That's going to be a good interview. We'll see what he has to say. All right, next up. Home sharing app Airbnb announcing it intends to go public sometime next year. Now, the company also saying it took in more than $1 billion in revenue in the second quarter, second time it's ever done so, and announced another milestone passed, now featuring 7 million listings in more than 100,000 cities around the world. Dominic Chu, what strikes me is that I did not know there was 100,000 cities in the world. Sounds like a whole Airbnb. It sounds like a lot. Everybody loved WeWork. Yep. Everybody loved Uber. Is Airbnb the same as those, or can it separate itself?
I think it has to separate itself. But the problem is that you are now put in a box with investors where they will view you in the same light as maybe not WeWork, but certainly Uber and Lyft, right? The sharing economy and everything else. The problem here is what's going to happen with regulations, what's going to happen locally with those 100,000 cities, because each of those municipalities has its own set of regulations, and how they unify those. I will say this, though. I am a hotel fan. I don't use a lot of the non-hotel type properties. I have ventured now into the vacation rental by owner market, but I have not, I'll say this for the record, I will not speak authoritatively on this because I've never used an Airbnb.
I have.
Well, I have,
times.
yeah. And the other thing is, if you look at Goldman Sachs' analysis of IPOs, they say profitability that first year is not the most important metric. What happens is you look at the sales over those first 3 years. And we know that Airbnb has now passed this milestone, 7 million Airbnb listings. They're going to launch this multi-million-dollar marketing campaign. If they've earned $1 billion in revenues, do they need that multi-million-dollar marketing campaign? I don't know. And to your point about...
You live in Manhattan. Manhattan hates Airbnb.
Wait a minute.
You can't have an Airbnb unless you live in the building because people don't want...
Transients.
Guess what?
Going through
Airbnb says in 2011,
I'm calling
in 2011, 40% of its listings were in the top 10 cities. This year, only 8% are. So 92% of those are in markets outside the top 10 biggest cities.
Sledge, bring in the hammer with numbers.
There you go.
A lot of numbers there.
She nailed it.
Wow.
You with me?
Now you're okay.
You feel me?
I didn't like you 30 seconds ago, but now you're all right.
All right.
Then there's this. A new survey found millennials, this is an amazing story. Millennials have an average of $28,000 in debt. Of course, with everybody screaming about student loan crises, you might assume the bulk of that debt is student loan debt, right? Oh, we got to... No, you'd be wrong. The biggest source of millennials' debt is not college loans. It is credit card bills. Contessa Brewer.
So they're
this
Americans
shocks me.
after all.
Yeah.
You know what? Not to be the grouchy old lady, but when people
I knew
say
the grouchy
now,
old lady was coming out.
when people say now, oh, we can't afford it, it means that your expectations of what is normal for life have changed. In the old days, we didn't have, I don't mean me, I mean Bill.
What are you trying
We
to
didn't
say?
have.
He told you to say that, didn't
I
he?
did not,
10 pair of
but
shoes,
you win the
and now-
round.
And 10 pair of shoes now seems the normal. You know, like it's just what people
When Bill
think.
rode his horse to work, I mean, no, come on, the old days. I'll defend you on that one. I will defend you on that one. People have been complaining about millennial spending since before we called them millennials. You know why? Because in your 20s, you make bad, dumb decisions.
Well-
then you get smarter and you learn from learning from your
Yes,
mistakes.
I mean, that cycle repeats itself, but they are at a slightly bigger disadvantage than previous generations because wages have not kept pace with inflation, and they are unable to afford some things that we could afford at the same age in previous generations. But to their advantage, mom and dad have been a big help in
Yeah.
many
So-
cases into defraying some costs for them
This
over the
whole
years.
thing was a Northwestern Mutual survey of those aged 23 to 38. So that's what we're going to define as millennials right now. The idea here is that the justification used was that they wanted to keep up a certain lifestyle. That's the same justification every generation has used
Yeah.
from the beginning of time
That
about
was the
trying to go
point.
into indebtedness to
That's
kind of
what
maintain a
Contessa
life.
meant. It's like
Right.
1710 in France. People were doing the same thing.
Same thing.
That's what the 20s is about.
Is he mansplaining you?
No, he's not. Go ahead.
I was supporting
I
her.
liked it.
I see.
I was
No, you're
sledge.
good.
That was like
Yeah.
I was
You were on
trying
the
to
right-
dig you out.
No. You were on the right path.
Thank
I,
you.
shovel.
I feel like I'm in a therapy
I
session.
don't know what it
today.
is right now.
this?
Bill. I'm just going to sit here.
Go ahead. Is there another one?
What's that?
Do we have another topic?
Yeah, next up, a new piece from Vanity Fair features a passage from Disney CEO Bob Iger on Iger's upcoming autobiography. It highlights his close relationship with the former CEO of Apple, Steve Jobs, and a potential mega merger between the two companies that never happened. In the piece, Iger wrote, quote, I believe that if Steve were still alive, we would have combined our companies, or at least discussed the possibility very seriously. This would have been, I think, a top story on
I
CNBC.
think it's very interesting. You know, I don't know. I didn't. I have to admit, I didn't read Walter Jacobson's biography of Steve Jobs, but I don't know if this came up at all. But I think it's just very interesting the relationship that these two men developed. I mean, he says we could have said anything to each other. Now that's saying a lot when you're talking about Steve Jobs because he didn't tolerate a lot from many people. But I don't know that they would have combined the two companies because Apple didn't have as much, I think, to offer Disney
At the time.
the other way around.
At the
Well,
time.
but you know, we have this convergence of media and technology now that's happening in many cases, but back then that wasn't the case.
Well, I would say
But
this.
also the employees are tend to be very
The
different.
cultures
types.
are
the
very
cultures
different,
the
yeah,
corporate
yeah.
culture is very different.
Sure, they're very different. But remember, I mean, this was about having that conversation. They would have had it.
Yeah.
Because they were pretty close when Disney bought Pixar. I mean, that was the whole reason Steve Jobs
That
took a
made
board
sense.
seat on
That
Disney.
made sense,
at
but
that
I don't
point.
think the whole company would have made
You
sense.
never know.
You know?
Okay. Well, finally, our last one is also on Apple. We saved the best for last. The company's submitting a trademark application for the term slofie. Slofies, and I hope I never say it again, are slow motion video selfies. Get it? A slow selfie. The slofie.
Like what you're seeing right
It's
now.
a special setting introduced on the new iPhone 11. The software shoots video at 120 frames per second, resulting in a special slow-mo effect. Apple paid $400 to submit the trademark application to keep competitors from cashing in on the slofie.
They
phrase,
deserve it.
Which exists only today.
They deserve the trademark.
Look, we made a slofie, Rachel and I.
They deserve
Look, watch.
the trademark.
Watch.
Oh, that's beautiful,
nice.
Brian.
That's
Flipping my
nice.
hair
Right.
just like Rachel.
That's
right.
nice.
Where's the fan? You need the fan.
It's a watch. Look, it's a slofie. Look at that
Go,
hair.
Rach.
No, I mean with the hair blowing and the whole.
Vidal Sassoon commercial here, and then you got this.
Do you think it's weird
I
that
got the Andy Roddick shirt going on.
they want to trademark this, but they don't offer an app to help you use it?
It's on the phone.
But it's on the, yeah, I mean,
It's,
I know,
it's
but
a feature on
I
the
know,
phone, but
but
they
what's
don't
gonna
call
happen-
it a slofie on the phone. They just call it a slow-mo feature. Yeah.
Yeah. So if you want to own it, then own it. Like
Yeah.
offer the thing, and you can do all this with it. And I don't know.
A name like that has to happen virally, don't you think? It
No.
comes up grassroots.
Yeah,
you
you
can't
can't-
just force
if
it on
that's the
everybody
case,
to
we should
say,
just let them have the
we're going to
trademark.
call this a slofie
it's not going to be
now."
worth anything anyway. Just let them have it.